Hello, everyone that's currently in this session. I'll be starting, well, right now. It just turned 10:30 according to my computer. Welcome to this session. My name is Larry White, and I'll be the moderator for this session, which is Unveiling the Secrets of Cost Modeling and Cost Optimization with Chris Domanski from SPCEA. And what I want to just take a moment is encourage you, as the presentation is going, to use the Q&A function to ask questions. You can type them in at any time. There's no need to wait to the end. We'll answer them at the end. Secondly, if you're viewing this from the live stream in the lobby, I want to encourage you to actually join the session so that you can use the Q&A feature and participate. Without any further ado, we'll start the presentation.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Pace, for having me be part of your very first virtual conference. I'm excited to share some of my thoughts with you all today, and yeah, let's get started. First, a little bit about my background. You can go on LinkedIn and check out my full bio, but I've been in automotive for about 30 years, in costing for about 20. Very diverse experience, I would say, across many types of costing spectrum, from quoting to cost modeling to cost estimating, cost engineering, cost optimization. So very fortunate to have been able to see a lot of different things. Been on both sides of the negotiation table. And all of that experience eventually led me cost engineering, a practical method for sustainable profit generation manufacturing. And the other is a business novel called The Cost, a business novel to help companies increase revenues and profits. And also led me to SPCEA to launch SPCEA and be president of the organization that I'd like to tell you more about. So SPCEA stands for Society of Product Cost Engineering and Analytics. And keeping in mind, the cost engineering to us is not necessarily engineering per se, but engineering your companies and your products' cost structure for profitability. But as an organization, you can see on the screen the mission. We're basically want to expand awareness and education of cost engineering within manufacturing. We aim to provide, to promote an understanding and application of cost engineering principles, methods, and practices, while supporting our members through training, certification, and networking opportunities. We want to be the preeminent source of cost engineering analytics and knowledge sharing. And really why we want to share knowledge, why we want people to know more about costing is because we, the people that have founded SPCEA have seen too many business failures because of lack of understanding of cost and profit. And so we want to prevent business failures. We want to prevent eventual layoffs because of these failures. I think it's good for our economy.
I'm not going to be talking
any economy,
for a little bit, but I got to listen.
For the world economy, I should say, and for the people in those economies. So this is kind of our goal, our objective, our mission. That's why we started the organization. Now, how we spread this knowledge is we try in multiple ways. We're offering certification training called Certified Product Cost Expert, or CPCE. This is training is focusing on cost modeling or estimating, cost controlling, cost optimization topics. But we also offer specialty trainings, kind of in addition to on special topics such as stamping or molding or forging, or topics like activity-based costing, training that we have that was developed by Doug Higgs, or TRIZ, which is a cost optimization tool. We also have conferences every year, trying to spread more knowledge through that. This year's conference is October 18 and 19, and it's a virtual conference as well, and we'd love to have you guys there as well. All right, so my topic today is unveiling the secrets of cost modeling and cost optimization. Really, the biggest secret here is that cost modeling and cost optimization are necessary to achieve optimal profitability, especially nowadays with a very competitive world that we live in. And what's interesting is that most companies think that they are already cost modeling, they're cost optimizing, but in fact, a lot of them are not doing it at all, and or doing it wrong, to be frank. Not cost modeling and optimizing, to me, is like navigating the ocean without any navigational tools. And this is something that I think Doug Higgs made as reference to, as comparing it to navigating. But I totally agree with it. This is how I see it: is if you're not doing it, then you're basically sending your crew out into the ocean without giving them any tools to reach their objective. And here's what I'm comparing these tools is, in cost controlling to a map, cost estimating to some navigational tools, and really cost optimization is really the ship and the crew on that ship. So I think it's important that that we do not send our crew out without any tools, any maps. We need to give them support, and so this is what I see as being a no-brainer, really. And if you agree, the question now is, okay, well, how do you do that correctly? How do you cost model? How do you optimize correctly? So let me get into that now. First, surprisingly, at least with my experience, it starts with objectives. What are you trying to accomplish as a company? Are everyone's objectives aligned with that? And are their objectives driving the right behaviors? And let me give you a couple of examples here where this is not the case. The objectives are not right, and they're not driving the right behaviors, and ultimately they don't lead to profit optimization. The first one is what I see a lot in purchasing, for example. A lot of purchasing departments, as objectives, they have annual cost savings. And annual cost saving is, seeing it within a lens of 1 year from January to December, trying to optimize, or not optimize, trying to reduce costs by X amount or X percentage. It's really missing out on the point that you need to optimize your cost structure, really, not get cost savings. And the behavior that leads to is that basically it's the focus is in the purchasing department and throughout the company is not on really optimizing the price that you're paying, but really just on that saving. And so it leads to inflated prices up front, and ultimately any reductions that you achieve annually are offset by the price increases that you see upfront on any products and projects. Another example is, this is something recent. Somebody asked me, hey, I need to optimize my conversion cost percentage. And as you can imagine, conversion cost as a percentage is kind of meaningless, because it doesn't capture the different variables that go into that. and more importantly, it focuses the behaviors on something maybe that's not appropriate for the company and not really on profit. For example, it could eliminate you from looking into vertical integration, because vertical integration would increase conversion costs. And if you focus or percentage, if you focus on reducing that, then you might not look into opportunities that could actually be good for the company, as an example. And there's other different things that people are focused on that maybe lead to bad behaviors, and usually it has to do with percentage, some kind of a percentage decrease, and ultimately this really needs to be focused on profit, or maybe return on investment. But that's what every department in the function in the company should be focused on, is profit. Second, and this is more general, but it's also very important, is are you focusing on the 3 Ps? And I also stole this from somebody else, but it's the 3 Ps are people, processes, and products. I think if you get those right, then you should be right. Now, what does this mean, people? I think hiring the right people, developing them correctly is really what you need to do, to be successful just in general as a company. Same with processes. Are your processes robust at the same time, or are they lean? Have you eliminated all the non-value steps? Are you using the correct systems in your processes? These are all important things that need to be optimized in order to be successful in cost reduction, optimization, modeling, but also as a company. And your outputs are products. So maybe not the end product you sell to the customer, but products could be what you create in finance, accounting, in costing. It's your reports, it's your estimates, your targets, your business cases. Are those good quality? So these 3 things are very important: people, processes, and products. And you need to get that right before you get anything else. But third, and this is why we're here today, is there are some secrets to successful cost modeling and cost optimization. And that's what I want to talk about next. First one is using causality-based cost models. I think that's something that I'm sure PACE will compliment me on suggesting, because this is really their focus. But it's very true. I've been to analyze over 500 companies, plants, and the term I dread the most hearing from them is, well, this is just how we've done it before in the past, somewhat implying that they must be right because we've been doing it for 20, 30 years. Unfortunately, many companies have inherited cost modeling methods that are outdated and or incorrect. And these lead to inaccurate costing data, and eventually leads to incorrect business decisions and potentially business failure. And so things like using labor-based cost distribution method or standard hour-based cost distribution methods leads to very inaccurate data. And really what you need to do as a company is learn how to distribute costs using drivers that cause cost to occur. Sorry, that's hard to say, which is causality. It's, it's the drivers that drive the cost need to be used in order to understand what cost goes to what products. But there's been a lot of discussions about activity-based costing being too complicated and things like that. I would say that it doesn't need to be. I think it needs to be. It can be very simple. It should be very simple, but most importantly, it needs to use logic and common sense. And so, if you can accomplish that, I think you'll go a long way towards accurate cost and profit assumptions. Number 2, somewhat related is avoiding peanut butter approach. This is where companies or estimators or accountants or finance people just whatever buckets of cost, they just take the same percentage, let's say, and just spread it exactly the same cost percentage across all products, all plants, or whatever. And this is a bad approach because it really hides it hides costs on some products, and maybe underestimates on others, on some, and overestimates on others, and it really leads to inaccurate estimates. It leads to either overestimated or underestimated projects. So anything like overhead or SG&A, using it as a percentage, and across all products and projects is could be and most usually is very inaccurate. One example I can also tell you as far as this is from my previous experience, where we quoted a project that you would have had a potential to double our sales, let's say, for the company. It was a huge project, and the company, the executive management wanted to use our standard SG&A percentage. I think it was 8%, whatever it was. But this 8% was based on last year's P&L, let's say, which, by the way, was heavily underutilized assumption. It was basically running at half 50% capacity utilization, and because of the various reasons. And so this 8% was basically a big expense over not production that was not matching to what that corporate overhead was built to. But adding this additional 100% on top production would have basically get us down to 4% in real terms as far as SG&A, because there's really no additional growth in SG&A needed. And so we were able to convince management that 4% was more appropriate if you looked at what this project would do to our SG&A, and we were able to win the business. But it was very close, a lot of resistance, and it's really a 4% difference that basically would have prevented us from winning that business. And that project ended up being very profitable for the company. So examples like these, you need to be very mindful of avoiding this peanut butter approach and really using actual costs. And this brings me to another point. Number 3 here is that cost structures are dynamic. They're not static. We cannot say that whatever happened last year is going to be representative of what our business is going to look like 2-3 years from now. And it's not, especially with the programs that we're quoting, that we're winning, things will change. I just gave you an example that's pretty drastic, where the company would have grown, would doubled in sales. But there's projects to be quoting that could proceed by 2, 3, 4, 5, 10%. Regardless, I think that needs to be accounted for in your cost modeling. Another important one, and this might be the most important one, is optimizing your capacity utilization. In my mind, you must optimize your capacity utilization, number one, okay? Each machine that you have has about 8,700 hours per year to produce parts, okay? This is running 24/7 every day, all year round. Obviously, that's often not possible, most of the time not possible, but you want to utilize as many hours as possible, because you basically develop, when you have a cost structure, the fixed cost structure of the building, the people, the management team, machines. You want to make sure that all running, the machines are all running so they can cover all those costs. Too many times I walk in the factories and suppliers, companies that are not paying attention to that. It amazes me because you're running 2,000 hours per year, 3,000 hours per year, and you have all these fixed costs, and you're asking for higher prices to cover that. But the markets are usually very, very competitive, and unless you're selling Lululemons, that sell themselves, you're not going to be able to cover these inefficiencies. And so utilization is very important to any business that lives in a competitive market. Next point, number 5, look to the future and not to the past. Really, whatever happened in the past is irrelevant at this point. And it really is important to drive your business towards some ideal future instead of thinking about what happened last year or whatever, or what you are today. You really want to design your future. You would say, well, this is what I want to accomplish. This is what I get to. And build your cost structure towards that, and how you quote business and how you manage your costs towards that. And above all, avoid the death spiral. This is what I call the death spiral. Is basically using last year's numbers, and then not winning business, and then then your cost structure gets even worse because you're covering less and less fixed costs, and then you quote again in the following year even worse cost structure, and then you keep doing that year over year until you're not winning business. You're not utilizing any of your capacity, and basically you're out of business. And shockingly, I see this so much when I go out to visit different companies. It's kind of built into this, I guess, this mentality that we based everything off of last year's results or some kind of a budget. But it happens so often when I see that, especially when a company, work in a company, and they had some kind of event in the past, let's say 2 years ago, whatever, that they lost a big chunk of business. And that chunk of business hugely impacted their cost structure. And they keep using that new cost structure, this new P&L, where missing that big business and this capacity utilization heavily reduced, and they keep using that to quote new business that's 2-3 years out, and they keep losing business because they're not competitive, and that just keeps happening. It gets worse and worse every year as they lose more and more business. The company usually goes out of business, and they don't even know why. So I would highly recommend that you look to the future instead of focusing on the past. All right. Number 6, this is related to the number 5 point, but don't undersell your own in-house capabilities. It's a similar concept I see, but it's within a company instead of just one company, where a company used to have some vertical integration capabilities, and somehow something happened and they lost some capability, lost some business. They can't do that anymore. And basically that little department within their company becomes less competitive in their own mind, because that cost structure looks worse and worse, because that department is less and less utilized, and they're using that cost structure to quote new business. And then they compare that to supplier base, and they go out and get quotes to do that outside. And guess what? These suppliers, who are usually fully utilized, are more competitive than the numbers that they're coming up internally. And so you outsource more and more stuff, and you leave these departments, these machines sitting there idle, thinking that, well, we're just not competitive. We can never compete with this guy. It's the same concept. You basically you put your own departments in the death spiral. Okay, so Again, try to think of the future. Try to think about what cost structure you want to accomplish and quote to that level. And you might find surprisingly that you're not as uncompetitive versus suppliers as you thought. Number 7, cost must be forecasted through its project life, not just estimated at some point in time. Yeah, so I mean, it's we're talking about project costs, but project costs are ultimately at the end the cost of your plant, because projects consist of your production in your plant and the company. You have to, when you quote business, you have to think about not just what we are today, but what does that look like over the project life, because project can span years of preparation, years of production, and then years of post-production activities. And so you need to really be you need to account for that. You need to be real with yourself of what those costs might be. Otherwise, you are either underquoting or maybe overquoting, depending on what you're assuming originally. Number 8, related to that, is also that costs change during project life. They're not static. There's inflation, there's deflation sometimes. You need to be able to be a little bit of an economist to predict these things. Because if you're not predicting these things, you basically assume that you're static for the next whatever number of years. And that's usually not true. So try to do your best. It's not easy, but it's actually very difficult. But if you don't do that, then you could be causing yourself inaccuracy problems in your estimates and your assumptions. Number 9, I'm sorry, is don't avoid reality. Okay, I've seen this before, where an executive will just make a call, kind of ignore the data that's provided to him or her, and just say, well, we'll figure out, we'll take the business and at the price that this customer wants. This taking on business and market price and figuring out the cost later, sometimes it might work out, but especially when you put more focus on your team's efforts to get to a certain cost, but you are putting yourself and your company at a financial risk. Really, the focus should be the opposite. Make sure you focus your team on getting to the bottom line. What is our actual cost, and then making decisions versus the market price, whether it makes sense for you. The opposite here is sandbagging, and that's something also you should avoid. By piling on risk on top of actual cost, you're probably preventing your company from winning profitable business. And then by charging your customer for risk that never materializes, you're ultimately demanding more profit. This sandbagging really ultimately could be very deadly to the company, because most of the time leads to you not winning business. And really nobody taking responsibility for it, or nobody even knowing what happened. People become conservative, just throwing numbers out there that just in case numbers, just because they have their own objectives. Again, going back to the objectives, they have to meet those objectives, and then not winning business, and ultimately business closes down and you go get a job somewhere else. But it's not fair to the stakeholders, to the people at the company. I think you need to take more responsibility to make sure you don't overestimate and sandbag the costs. Number 11, this is more about cost optimization. I know that a lot of you on the call are accountants and finance people who are reporting on existing costs for projects already in production. But with cost optimization, is really the biggest impact you can make on cost is not after you go production, but in design, especially early in design. At the concept phase is where you have the most potential to reduce cost. After the part is designed, the tooling is already built, and you're in production, it's very difficult to change the course of that product. Especially when the customer is aware already what the product is and is working for that customer. Nobody wants to take any risks, and so you are really stuck with what you had. And so I would recommend that you focus on not just what happened in production, but go back to project life and understand the cost at the concept level and try to optimize the cost then. And number 12, the cost must be controlled throughout the product life. Again, it's not just after you go production and you start optimizing. You really need to start at the concept, but then as you're developing the product, which could take, I don't know, depending on what industry you're in, anywhere between 6 months to 5 years, you really need to control it as you go along, because it could really spiral out of control very fast, very easily. And so there needs to be a lot of checks and balances throughout the process. Most companies have gates that they in development where they check the design, they check whether they can manufacture the product. But some companies lack the focus on cost. Are we okay? We quoted at X profit. Are we okay now? Did anything change? Did our design somehow get more complex, and now we have to use different machines? And are we still profitable? You'd be surprised how many companies don't do that, and they should. It's very critical. Whatever you thought about at the concept level, or you sold this customer, you won the business, and then by the time you go to production, you find, well, how are we not making money? Or how are we sending $5 on every product that we sell to the customer? So it's critical that you have good control over your costs throughout product development, and of course afterwards as well. Also, speaking of cost optimization, it's important to challenge all costs, not just focus on 1, 2, 3 things. Some companies, I should say, have some sacred cows. But unless you're challenging all of your costs, you might not be competitive, especially in manufacturing. Really, for most of the manufacturing industries. One thing that I want to point out here is my last cost buckets here: sustainability. This is somewhat new, something that we haven't so much looked at in the past, but in Europe especially, there's now a lot of focus on sustainability, and sustainability comes with cost, and it's going to be even more and more important in Europe, and it's going to be important in the US and other countries as well. But in order to reduce CO2 emissions, you need to invest, and so there's additional costs associated with that. So you need to somehow account for that and prepare for that and strategize toward to either maintain the cost you have or reduce it somehow in order to be able to sell to the customer, because the prices most likely are not going to go up. I think that there's always a pressure on prices to stay at the same level or go down. So it's kind of there's opposite pressure here that somehow needs to be accounted for in your future decisions. Next one is number 14. Use all the tools at your disposal. So a lot of companies don't do this or kind of pretend to play at it, but there's benchmarking, there's workshops, strategies that you can do. There's VAV, there's TRIZ, there's data mining, regression analysis, very simple regression analysis. There's different software that you can use for costing, for cost optimization. There's, of course, AI that's everybody's saying is coming, because I think it is. And it's very important. The data, especially now with so much data out there, it's going to be very important to to get your hands around it. And I think, if you don't, your understanding of cost and profit could really easily spiral out of control. And without having that understanding, you're not going to be able to make good decisions. And another point is that, instead of just focusing on your own costs within your own plants, within your own house, it's also important to go out the supply base and do the same, because oftentimes in manufacturing, 80% of your cost is in your supply base, the purchase parts that you're buying. And if you're not optimizing costs together with your suppliers, you are not optimizing your cost, or most of it. You're optimizing only a small portion of it, 20% or whatever. And you're leaving the other 80% on the table. And so, well, you might think that, well, I'm sure my suppliers are doing this. They're optimizing their own cost. I don't know. Some do. A lot of them don't, from my experience. So I would suggest that you look into that as well. All right. My last point, number 16, because the audience here is probably more accounting and finance. I just want to talk about what role you have, and I think you have a critical role in steering your companies toward optimal profitability. I hope that the points previously I made are clear. And a lot of it was about quoting and project controlling, optimization, but it's not even for people who are in accounting, who are reporting what happened in the past, last month, last year. It's important to understand that a lot of the costing guys report through finance, and so at some point you might find yourself managing a team of cost estimators or cost experts. It's important to understand the role that they play for your company. And I don't believe that accountants and finance professionals should only be focused on reporting. I believe that everyone has a role in driving their company towards a profitable future. It's really a team sport. And so I think we need to look forward and not always in the back. Obviously, reporting to your stakeholders and so people understand what happened and where you're at as a company is important. But ultimately, we all try and drive the company towards something. There's strategy, I hope, that in your company, and I think accounting and finance professionals should be part of that. And obviously, cost optimization and cost modeling is part of that. So I would say that, in addition to what I just said, I think we need to make sure that as finance professionals, accounting professionals, that the data that we come up with is accurate, that we get rid of stuff that's not relevant to the future, stuff that happened in the past, one-offs or some irrelevant costs should not be considered in the future. Make sure that the costs are distributed to products correctly. So activity-based costing or whatever logical way of causality-based way of distribution is important to make good decisions. And again, don't wait until the projects go in production and you're just counting beans. This is, I think your contribution could be a lot earlier in the process, in the development, from starting from the concept all the way through development, together with engineering of your products. I think you can help engineering, you can help manufacturing and purchasing colleagues optimize those costs before they go into production. So, I think your company's future and its employees are literally in your hands. Again, I urge you to take an active role in making sure that your company does the right thing. Don't excuse yourself from business failures because you're only supposed to report. help your company take the red pill, like Neo did in the Matrix, and live in the real world, and be the navigator, and also don't be afraid to rock the boat. That's my message. And again, with that, I want to thank you for having me here. Please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. Check out SPCEA online at spcea.org. You can follow it on LinkedIn as well. And I think our organizations are very similar in the message, maybe a different audience, but basically the same message and the same knowledge improvement that we're trying to push for. And get engaged, whether it's with PACE or SPCEA or any other organization. Get engaged, be helpful, spread the message, spread the costing knowledge. Again, thank you very much. We can move on to questions, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, thank you very much, Chris, for that presentation. We do have some questions. One of the first ones was, what are the biggest cost modeling issues you see at companies when you visit them or consult with them?
Thanks, Larry, for that question. Good question. I think some of the things I already mentioned, but I would say the first thing that you notice when you're talking to companies and the finance staffs is that most of the time they are not clear on how the numbers are coming about. It's usually some kind of a method that the predecessor or predecessor's predecessor came up with, and they continue to do the same methodology moving forward, but there's no understanding behind the numbers. And at the same time, they would die by those numbers. Most of the time, they are convinced that these numbers are correct. They must be right, and it's difficult to convince them that they might not be. There might be some opportunities to understand the cost better. That's the biggest thing I see. The second biggest thing is probably the lack of understanding of how your capacity utilization impacts your costs, your profitability. Again, looking backwards instead of forwards. Many companies that run at 30 or 50% capacity utilization and feel like they cannot move, they cannot get any better in their cost assumptions, and somehow the optimization or improvement in capacity utilization doesn't come up. It's very strange to me, but this is I see that all the time, unfortunately.
Okay, how do you suggest handling very weak or non-causal costs? I mean, fundamentally, do you assign them out to products and services, or don't you?
My recommendation is that you assign as many costs to drivers as possible. For example, if you have, I think the hardest cost to assign to products is stuff that we call overhead. But think about what are overheads. Overhead could be a sales department, for example, and I think Cost Perform talked about it yesterday. Is okay? Well, you can have easy customers and you have difficult customers. Okay, if you're quoting business or you're talking about profitability of a project for a specific customer, you should probably be real with yourself and say, okay, if this customer is difficult, it's causing me more cost, whether it be by me having to hire more people. I have 3 sales guys on this customer, only 1 on this customer, or I have to go visit the supplier all the time, or I have to do whatever other things. And so this is it's a driver. It causes you more cost for that customer. That's how you can maybe work on, let's say, sales, separating the sales costs of different products, or distributing. Accounting, same thing. We have some customers, or could be low volume projects, or maybe projects that have a lot of mix. For the within the volume that you're selling for this, let's say, program, could be 10 different variations, and that causing you a lot more invoicing, a lot more paperwork. You might need more accountants. That's a cost driver, and you can assign those costs to a customer or product that way. So yes, there will be some that will be very difficult to assign, but that you should try to reduce that, let's say, not that cost that you cannot assign specific to projects as to be as little as possible, and improve your accuracy.
Okay, great. How do you suggest handling idle and excess capacity costs when you think about costing? You talked a lot about minimizing it, but they're there sometimes, and how do you think about handling those?
Well, if that's your reality today, if you have idle capacity, then yes, I mean, this, as far as reporting, that's what you should report. But as far as quoting business, to me, you have to quote to, let's say, optimal capacity. Not optimal capacity doesn't have to be 100% of capacity utilization. It could be maybe 80%. This is what the most you can achieve, okay, as a company, let's say. And so let's say if it's 80%, you design your cost structure and understand your cost structure and what would it look like at 80% capacity utilization, instead of quoting where you might be today, which, I don't know, could be 50, could be 30%. And because again, if you quote at 30%, you're not going to win the business that you want. You're never going to get to the optimal capacity utilization. So it's just especially manufacturing, the business is so competitive most of the time that if you even over 1, 2, 3% of your competitors, you're just not going to win business. So to me, a better option is to drive towards that 80% or whatever optimal capacity you have, and improve your chances of getting there. And of course, there was going to be some risk involved, because you might not get to 80% today. If you're at 50 today, it's going to take some time, but that's what you should be aiming for.
Great, Chris. I just got a question, and I don't really know what this is, but I'm going to ask you since you referenced it. How can TRIZ, T-R-I-Z, and you might mention quickly what that is for those of us who don't know, bring improvement in cost?
Yeah, this is more of it's not really an accounting tool. Let's say it's more of an engineering tool. This is what I said earlier, is that the biggest impact you can make on cost is in design phase, and this is a tool developed in Russia by a Russian scientist. I know Russia is a dirty word right now, but this guy was brilliant, and he developed this technique where he, after analyzing thousands of patents, he came up with 40 different possible solutions, or solutions that he normally has seen to problems. And he says, basically, whenever you have a problem, you want to optimize cost, look at these 40 solutions and see any of them apply, to make this an explanation simple. And so this is really, it doesn't have to be necessarily engineering, it could be manufacturing, but this offers a list of solutions to either cost or value optimization. And so this is what a lot of companies are using in order to improve their costs at the design phase.
Oh, thanks. Hey, we're almost out of time. I'm going to ask you one last question. I'll ask you to be brief, and this is actually a question from me. It's a question I ask a lot when I speak to manufacturing groups. And it's very simple. Do you typically see accounting and finance departments as business partners or as roadblocks? Difficult
question to answer, because it's often both. It's unfortunately more, in my opinion, more personality dependent than, let's say, organization dependent. You have people who are very helpful in trying to kind of help the company drive towards something and achieve some things. But there's also a lot of people who see the job as basically reporting or just kind of doing, kind of what do what job defines in the job description. I see very little evidence that there's that structurally, as organizations, this being engaged with the rest of the organization and driving towards the future is designed into the system.
All right, that's pretty close to the answer I typically get, which is 80% of manufacturing people tend to say roadblock. So thank you very much. A very insightful presentation with a lot of practical advice for people. Thank you very much for presenting to the Profits Plus conference. I'm going to end the session.
Thank you for having me.